Christmas morning shattered my world when Amanda's daughter Madison unwrapped box after box of designer clothes, while my daughter Lily received a trash bag of faded hand. Me, Downs. Carol laughed coldly, saying new clothes are a luxury, while Frank chuckled, these suit her better anyway. As Madison paraded in expensive outfits, Lily silently held worn fabric against her small frame, eyes brimming with unshed tears. But my parents had no idea their cruel favoritism had just triggered something that would expose their darkest family secret and change everything forever this Christmas. I needed to get away from the living room where Madison continued modeling her new Ralph Lauren sweater and Nike sneakers while Lily sat quietly in the corner, sorting through clothes that looked like they belonged in a donation bin. My chest felt tight watching my 10-year-old daughter try to smile as she held up a stained Mickey Mouse shirt that was clearly meant for a much younger child. "I'm going to get some air," I announced to no one in particular, heading toward my old bedroom at the back of the house. The room hadn't changed much since I moved out 15 years ago. Same pale yellow walls, same twin bed with the faded lavender comforter. I sat on the edge of the bed and let myself feel the full weight of what had just happened downstairs. This wasn't the first Christmas where Madison received significantly better gifts than Lily, but it had never been this blatant, this cruel. I reached for the tissue box on my old desk, but it was empty. Frustrated, I pulled open the bottom drawer to look for napkins or anything to wipe my eyes. My fingers brushed against something unexpected, a thick manila envelope wedged in the very back corner of the drawer. Curious, I pulled it out. The envelope was addressed to me in handwriting I didn't recognize, postmarked 3 years ago. My heart skipped when I saw the return address. Law Offices of Patterson and Associates. Inside were legal documents that made me gasp out loud. Last will and testament of Ruth Eleanor Patterson. Great Aunt Ruth. My father's aunt who had always been kind to me, especially during my difficult teenage years, when I got pregnant with Lily at 16. I remembered her gentle voice telling me that mistakes didn't define a person's worth, that I was stronger than I knew. But wait, Great Aunt Ruth had died 3 years ago? How had I not known this? No one had told me about her death, let alone that she had left me anything in her will. My hands shook as I read through the legal documents. According to the will, Great Aunt Ruth had left me her entire estate, valued at over $200,000. The money was specifically designated for my dear niece Suzanne, the responsible daughter who sacrificed her education and dreams to raise her child with dignity and grace. There was a handwritten notepaper, clipped to the will. "Suzanne, you were always my favorite. Your strength during your teenage pregnancy showed me the kind of woman you would become. This inheritance is meant to help you finish your education and provide security for you and Lily. Don't let anyone convince you that you don't deserve this." I felt dizzy reading those words. Great Aunt Ruth had left me enough money to go back to school, to give Lily a better life, to stop struggling paycheck to paycheck at my 2 part-time jobs. But why hadn't anyone told me? Then I found the bank statements, account number, routing number, and a balance that made my stomach drop. The account that should have held $200,000 now showed just over $120,000. There were monthly withdrawals for the past 3 years, ranging from $1,500 to $3,000 each time. Someone had been taking my inheritance money. I spread the documents across my old homework desk, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. The withdrawals were authorized by someone with power of attorney, someone who had legal access to make decisions about the account. My father's signature was on every withdrawal slip. The room started spinning as I realized what this meant. For 3 years, while I worked double shifts at the diner and the grocery store, while I chose between buying Lily new shoes or paying the electric bill, while I asked my parents for help during emergencies only to be told money is tight, they had been accessing an inheritance that was rightfully mine. Suddenly, Amanda's comfortable lifestyle made sense. Her nice car, her spacious apartment, Madison's private dance lessons, and expensive clothes. My sister worked part-time at a marketing firm, definitely not enough to afford the lifestyle she maintained. But if she was receiving regular financial support from my stolen inheritance, I thought about all the times I had struggled, all the nights I lay awake worrying about money, all the occasions when I had to tell Lily we couldn't afford something she wanted. Meanwhile, My parents had been funding my sister's comfortable life with money that was meant to help me and Lily. The cruelest part was how they had made me feel guilty for struggling. "If only you had made better choices," my mother would say. "If only you had been more responsible," my father would add. All while they were literally stealing my chance at a better future. I carefully photographed each document with my phone, making sure every detail was captured clearly. My hands were steadier now, driven by a growing sense of righteous anger that burned away the helplessness I had felt downstairs. Great Aunt Ruth had believed in me. She had wanted to help me build a better life for myself and Lily. And my own parents had stolen that opportunity while watching me struggle and judging me for my difficulties. As I headed back downstairs, clutching the evidence of their deception, I heard Madison's laughter echoing through the hallway. She was still showing off her new clothes to anyone who would watch. But now I knew exactly how those clothes had been paid for. This Christmas morning had just become the beginning of the end of my family's lies. Back in the living room, I watched my family with completely different eyes. Amanda was helping Madison organize her new clothes into neat piles, occasionally holding up items and commenting on the quality. "This cashmere sweater is so soft, honey. Much nicer than those cheap ones from department stores." My mother nodded approvingly. "Quality clothing lasts longer. It's better to have a few nice pieces than a closet full of cheap items that fall apart." I almost laughed out loud at the irony. Easy to preach about quality when you're spending someone else's inheritance money. "Lily, come show everyone how the jeans fit," my father called out, though his tone lacked any genuine enthusiasm. Lily obediently held up a pair of faded jeans with worn knees. They were clearly too big for her small frame. "They're nice, Grandpa. Thank you." The patience in my daughter's voice broke my heart. She was trying so hard to be grateful, to not cause any family tension, just like I had taught her. But seeing her accept this treatment, while Madison flaunted clothes worth more than my monthly rent, made me sick. "I need to step outside for a minute," I said, heading for the front porch. The cold December air helped clear my head as I pulled out my phone and logged into my mobile banking app. If my suspicions were correct, I should be able to find some trace of where my inheritance money had gone. It didn't take long to piece together the puzzle. I had Amanda's social media accounts memorized, and looking back at her posts over the past 3 years painted a clear picture. The fancy vacation to Hawaii last spring. The brand new SUV she bought with savings. The expensive private school Madison had attended for 2 years before switching back to public school. I did quick mental math. Hawaii vacation for 2 people. At least $4,000. The SUV down payment, probably $8,000 to $10,000. Private school tuition, $15,000 per year for 2 years. That was over $40,000 right there, and those were just the big expenses I could easily identify. Then there were all the smaller things that had puzzled me over the years. How Amanda always had money for Madison's activities, dance lessons, gymnastics, art classes, summer camps. How she never seemed stressed about bills despite her part-time work schedule. How she could afford to shop at expensive stores while I clipped coupons and shopped clearance racks. My phone buzzed with a text from my boss at the diner. "Can you pick up an extra shift tomorrow?" Sarah called in sick. I stared at that message, thinking about how I would probably say yes because I needed every dollar I could earn. Meanwhile, my parents had access to enough of my money to completely change my life circumstances. The front door opened behind me. "Suzanne? Everything okay?" Amanda's voice carried that fake concern she had perfected over the years. I turned around, studying my sister's appearance with new awareness. Her highlights looked professionally done, probably $200 every 6 weeks. Her designer handbag was definitely authentic, not one of the knockoffs I carried. Even her casual Christmas morning outfit was clearly expensive. "Just needed some fresh air," I replied. "It's been quite a morning." "Madison loved her gifts," Amanda said, settling onto the porch step beside me. "She's been wanting those specific brands for months." "I'm sure she has. Those clothes must have cost a fortune." Amanda waved her hand dismissively. "I've been saving up. You know how important it is for kids to fit in at school. I remember how hard it was for us growing up when we couldn't afford the things other kids had." I almost choked on her audacity. "Really? You've been saving up?" "Well, Mom and Dad helped a little." They know how tight things have been since Madison's father stopped paying child support. Another lie. I knew for a fact that Madison's father had never been in the picture and had never paid child support. Amanda had been spinning that story for years to gain sympathy and financial assistance. Must be nice to have that kind of family support, I said carefully. Oh, you know how they are. They help when they can, but they're on a fixed income. They've always been fair about treating us equally. Equal treatment. I wanted to laugh and scream at the same time. If this was equal treatment, I was the Queen of England. Amanda, can I ask you something? Do you remember Great Aunt Ruth? I watched her face carefully. There was the slightest flicker of something, surprise, fear, before she composed herself. Aunt Ruth? Dad's aunt? I barely knew her. Why? Just wondering. I was thinking about her earlier, remembering how kind she was to me when I was pregnant with Lily. That was a long time ago, Suzanne. Why are you bringing up ancient history on Christmas? Ancient history. Great Aunt Ruth had died just 3 years ago, and my inheritance had been stolen piece by piece ever since. But Amanda was acting like she barely remembered our great aunt's existence. No reason, just feeling nostalgic, I guess. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my bank sending me a low balance alert. My checking account had $37 until my next paycheck. $37 while my inheritance account had been depleted by $80,000 to fund my sister's comfortable lifestyle. I should probably head inside, Amanda said, standing up. Madison wants to model her clothes for everyone again. As she headed back into the house, I noticed her Coach purse. Real leather, probably worth $600. Last month, I had carried my groceries in a canvas tote bag because I couldn't afford to replace my worn-out purse. But tomorrow, everything would start to change. Tonight, I would do more research. I would document everything I could find. And then I would decide exactly how to confront my family with the truth about what they had stolen from me and my daughter. Great Aunt Ruth had believed I deserved better. She had tried to give me the tools to build a better life. My parents had stolen that gift, but they hadn't destroyed my strength. They were about to learn exactly how much fight I had in me. Christmas dinner at my parents' house was usually a tense affair, but this year felt different. I sat across from Amanda, watching her cut Madison's prime rib into perfect bite-sized pieces while Lily quietly ate her portion without complaint. The contrast in how our daughters were treated extended even to dinner. Madison's plate was piled high with the best cuts of meat and largest portions, while Lily received what was clearly the least desirable pieces. Madison, tell everyone about your dance recital next month, my mother encouraged, her voice warm with genuine interest. Madison beamed as she launched into detailed descriptions of her costume, the choreography, and the theater where the performance would be held. It was clearly an expensive production. The costume alone cost $300, Amanda mentioned casually. But it's so important for the children to have professional, quality outfits for their performances. I nearly choked on my mashed potatoes. $300 for a dance costume? I had sewn Lily's Halloween costume by hand from clearance fabric, because even the cheap store-bought options were outside my budget. That's wonderful, honey, my father said, reaching over to pat Madison's hand. We're so proud of your dedication to dance. Lily's been doing great in school, I said, trying to redirect some positive attention toward my daughter. She made the honor roll again this semester. That's nice, my mother replied with significantly less enthusiasm. Academic achievement is important, of course. Though extracurricular activities like dance really help children develop confidence and social skills. The implication was clear. Lily was lacking in confidence and social skills because I couldn't afford to enroll her in expensive activities. Never mind that I had looked into dance classes and discovered they cost $150 per month, not including costumes, shoes, and recital fees. Speaking of family achievements, I said, deciding to test the waters. I was thinking earlier about Great Aunt Ruth. She was always so supportive of education and helping family members reach their potential. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. My father's fork stopped halfway to his mouth, and my mother's smile became noticeably forced. Why are you bringing up Aunt Ruth? My father asked, his tone sharper than the question warranted. Just remembering how kind she was. I was wondering what happened to her. Is she still living in that little house on Maple Street? Amanda looked uncomfortable, glancing between our parents before answering. Suzanne, Aunt Ruth, passed away several years ago. I thought you knew that. Really? No one told me. When did she die? I don't remember exactly, my father said dismissively. It was quite some time ago. She was very elderly, and her health had been failing. Did she leave a will? I remember her mentioning that she wanted to help family members with education and things like that. My mother laughed, but it sounded forced. Suzanne, honey, you're being awfully morbid for Christmas dinner. Why all these questions about ancient family history? I'm just curious. Aunt Ruth was always interested in my education. I wondered if she left any kind of scholarship fund or something to help family members go back to school. The silence that followed was deafening. Madison continued eating, oblivious to the tension, but Amanda had stopped touching her food altogether. Well, my father finally said, if there had been any kind of inheritance, I'm sure it would have been handled appropriately. These things are usually quite complicated, you know. Legal fees, taxes, family obligations. What kind of family obligations? I pressed. Suzanne, this really isn't appropriate dinner conversation, my mother interrupted. It's Christmas. We should be focusing on gratitude and family togetherness. You're absolutely right, Mom. I am thinking about family. I'm thinking about how families should support each other, especially when someone is struggling. Amanda shifted uncomfortably in her chair. We do support each other. We're all here together, aren't we? Are we, though? I mean, really supporting each other? I looked around the table, because sometimes it feels like there are different levels of support for different family members. What's that supposed to mean? My father's voice had taken on a warning tone. Well, for example, Amanda seems to be doing really well financially, despite working part-time, new car, nice clothes for Madison, expensive activities. Meanwhile, I'm working 2 jobs, and can barely make ends meet. Amanda works very hard, my mother said defensively. And she's been through a difficult time as a single mother. I'm also a single mother, Mom. But somehow Amanda's single motherhood seems to come with a lot more financial resources than mine does. That's not fair, Suzanne, Amanda protested. I budget carefully, and make sacrifices. What kind of sacrifices? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like your life has gotten easier every year while mine has gotten harder. Maybe if you had made better choices earlier in life, you wouldn't be struggling so much now, my father said coldly. There it was. The familiar refrain that had echoed through my adult life. My teenage pregnancy was the original sin that justified any inequality in how I was treated compared to Amanda. Better choices, I repeated. Like what, Dad? Like not getting pregnant at 16? Because I seem to remember that Amanda and I both faced the same choice, and somehow her path led to financial security while mine led to constant struggle. That's completely different, my mother snapped. Amanda learned from your mistakes and made responsible decisions. Responsible decisions like relying on family financial support instead of becoming truly independent? The accusation hung in the air like smoke. Madison looked confused, glancing between the adults as the conversation grew more heated. Lily had stopped eating entirely and was staring at her plate. I think this conversation has gone too far, Amanda said quietly. We're upsetting the children. You're right, I agreed. Lily, sweetie, why don't you go watch TV in the living room? Take Madison with you. After the girls left the room, the 4 of us sat in tense silence for several minutes. I think you owe your sister an apology, my father finally said. Actually, I think I deserve some honest answers about family finances and how certain people have been able to maintain lifestyles that don't match their actual incomes. Suzanne, you're being paranoid and jealous, my mother said. Just because Amanda has been more successful doesn't mean there's some conspiracy against you. More successful. That's interesting. What exactly has Amanda been successful at? Before anyone could answer, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jessica Martinez, an old family friend who had known us since childhood. Hi, Jessica. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, honey. Listen, I'm calling because I'm outside your parents' house. I wanted to drop off some cookies, but I can hear voices through the windows and it sounds like there's some kind of argument going on. Is everything okay? I looked around the table at my family's uncomfortable faces. Actually, Jessica? Would you mind coming in? I think we could use a neutral perspective on something. Suzanne, no, Amanda said quickly. This is private family business. Is it? Because I'm starting to think our family business hasn't been very private at all. When Jessica knocked on the door a few minutes later, her presence shifted the entire dynamic in the room. She hugged me warmly, greeted my parents politely, and gave Amanda a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I hope I'm not interrupting anything important, Jessica said. Actually, I replied, I was just asking about Great Aunt Ruth and whether she left any inheritance to help family members with education or financial support. Jessica's expression changed immediately. She glanced at my parents, then back at me. Oh, honey. You don't know about the inheritance, do you? The room went completely silent. Jessica looked around the room at the shocked faces staring back at her, and I watched her realize she had just revealed something significant. Oh no, she whispered. I thought you knew. I assumed after all this time. What inheritance, Jessica? I asked quietly. Though my heart was pounding so hard, I was sure everyone could hear it. She glanced at my parents, who looked like deer caught in headlights. Maybe I should go. This seems like something you need to discuss as a family. Please don't leave, I said. I think I really need to hear what you were about to say. Jessica sat down slowly in the chair next to me, her face troubled. Suzanne, your Great Aunt Ruth left you a substantial inheritance when she died 3 years ago. She specifically wanted the money to go toward your education and to help provide security for you and Lily. How do you know about this? My father demanded, his face flushed red. Because Ruth talked to me before she died, Jessica replied calmly. She was worried about you, Suzanne. She knew how hard you were struggling, and she wanted to make sure you had the resources to build a better life. She asked me to check on you after her death to make sure you received the inheritance properly. I felt like I couldn't breathe. But no one told me she had died. I never received any inheritance. I know, Jessica said softly. I've been waiting for 3 years for you to mention getting the money. When you never said anything, I started asking around. That's when I learned that your parents had been named as trustees to manage the funds until you were ready to receive them. Every eye in the room turned to my parents. My father's jaw was clenched so tight I could see the muscles twitching, and my mother had gone completely pale. Tell me everything, I said to Jessica, ignoring my parents' obvious discomfort. Ruth left you over $200,000. She was very specific in her will about how the money should be used. Education was the priority, but she also wanted to make sure Lily had opportunities that you couldn't afford on your own. $200,000, I repeated numbly. That would have changed everything. I could have gone back to school years ago. I could have given Lily a completely different life. Where is the money now? Jessica asked, though her expression suggested she already suspected the answer. I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank statements I had photographed earlier. About $80,000 has been withdrawn over the past 3 years. Monthly payments ranging from $1,500 to $3,000. Jessica studied the statements, her face growing increasingly angry. These withdrawals are being made with power of attorney authority. By me, my father admitted quietly. I was named as trustee to manage the funds responsibly. Responsibly? Jessica's voice was sharp. Ruth's will was very clear about the money going directly to Suzanne. What have you been using it for? The silence stretched on for nearly a minute before Amanda spoke up. Some of it helped with Madison's school expenses. And my car payment when I was between jobs. Your car payment? I stared at my sister in disbelief. You've been driving around in a car that was paid for with my inheritance money? It wasn't like that, Amanda protested. Mom and Dad said the money was available to help family members who were struggling. But I was struggling, I said, my voice rising. I've been struggling for years while you were using my inheritance to live comfortably. Suzanne, you need to understand, my mother interrupted. We were managing the money carefully. We planned to give it to you eventually, but we wanted to make sure you were in a position to use it wisely. Wisely? You mean you didn't trust me to manage my own inheritance? You've made some questionable financial decisions in the past, my father said. We thought it was better to provide support indirectly, while you got your life more stable." Jessica shook her head in disgust. That's not what Ruth intended at all. She wanted Suzanne to have immediate access to the money so she could go back to school and improve her circumstances. She was worried that other family members might try to interfere. "Other family members like you?" I asked my parents. "We were trying to protect you from making mistakes," my mother said defensively. "Mistakes like what? Getting an education? Providing better opportunities for Lily? Those are the mistakes you were protecting me from?" "Ruth didn't understand your situation," my father argued. "She didn't know how impulsive you could be with money." "Impulsive? When have I ever been impulsive with money? I've been working multiple jobs for 15 years just to keep a roof over our heads. I've never had enough money to be impulsive with." Jessica reached into her purse and pulled out a folder. "I have copies of Ruth's original will and her personal letters explaining her intentions. She was very worried that your parents might try to control the inheritance instead of giving it directly to you. She handed me several pages of handwritten notes in Great Aunt Ruth's familiar, careful script. I know Suzanne's parents mean well, but they have always treated her as less capable than Amanda. I worry they will use my death as an opportunity to continue that pattern. The inheritance is meant to give Suzanne independence, not to make her more dependent on family approval." Reading those words felt like getting a hug from beyond the grave. Great Aunt Ruth had understood exactly what my family dynamics were like, and she had tried to protect me from this exact situation. "There's more," Jessica said gently. Ruth was concerned enough about potential interference that she established a second trust fund specifically for Lily's education. It's worth $50,000 and can only be accessed when Lily turns 18 or if she's accepted to college, whichever comes first. I looked up at her in shock. "Another 50,000? Does anyone else know about this?" Jessica glanced meaningfully at my parents. "Ruth made me promise to keep the second fund secret until Lily was ready for college. She was afraid it might disappear like the main inheritance if certain family members knew about it." My father stood up abruptly from the table. "This is ridiculous. We've been managing Suzanne's money responsibly, helping the whole family when needed. Ruth had no business creating secret accounts and turning family members against each other. She had every business protecting her inheritance from being stolen," I said, standing up to face him. "Because that's what this is, Dad, theft. You took money that was legally mine and gave it to Amanda instead." "We didn't steal anything," Amanda protested. "The money was used to help family members who needed it." "I needed it," I shouted. "I've needed it for 3 years while I watched you live a lifestyle I could never afford. Do you have any idea what it's like to work 60-hour weeks and still struggle to pay basic bills while your sister drives around in a car that should have been mine?" The room fell silent except for the sound of my own heavy breathing. Through the wall, I could hear the television in the living room where Lily and Madison were watching Christmas movies, blissfully unaware that their mothers were in the middle of a family crisis that would change everything. Jessica reached over and squeezed my hand. "Suzanne, you have legal options. What your parents have done constitutes misappropriation of inheritance funds. Ruth's will was very clear about her intentions." "Are you threatening us?" my father asked Jessica. "I'm not threatening anyone. I'm simply stating facts. Ruth trusted me to make sure her wishes were carried out, and I failed her for 3 years by assuming her family would do the right thing." I looked around the table at the 3 people who should have been my strongest supporters, who instead had spent 3 years systematically stealing my chance at a better life. "I want every penny back," I said quietly. "Every single dollar that was taken from my inheritance without my knowledge or permission. Suzanne, please," my mother pleaded. "We can work something out. We never meant to hurt you." "You never meant to hurt me? You watched me struggle for 3 years while using my money to make Amanda's life easier. You watched me cry about not being able to afford things for Lily while spending my inheritance on Madison's dance costumes and private school. The truth was finally out in the open, and there was no taking it back. My family had stolen from me, lied to me, and watched me suffer while they benefited from my inheritance. But now, I knew the truth, and I was going to make sure justice was served." The next morning, I sat in the parking lot of Patterson and Associates, the law firm listed on Great Aunt Ruth's will, clutching Jessica's folder of documents. I had barely slept after the confrontation at Christmas dinner, but I was more determined than ever to fight for what was rightfully mine. The attorney who met with me was a woman in her 40s named Sarah Martinez, who had actually worked on Great Aunt Ruth's estate planning before her death. "I remember your great aunt very well," Sarah said as she reviewed the documents I had brought. "She was extremely concerned about ensuring her inheritance reached you directly. She mentioned several times that she was worried about family interference." "She was right to be worried," I said bitterly. "My parents have been using my inheritance to support my sister for the past 3 years, while I struggled to make ends meet." Sarah studied the bank statements and power of attorney documents carefully. "This is a clear case of breach of fiduciary duty. Your parents were named as trustees with very specific instructions to provide you with immediate access to the funds for educational purposes. Instead, they've been using the money for unauthorized expenses. What are my legal options?" "Several. First, we can demand immediate restitution of all misappropriated funds. Second, we can have your parents removed as trustees and transfer full control of the remaining inheritance directly to you. Third, if they refuse to cooperate, we can pursue criminal charges for embezzlement." Criminal charges. The word sent a chill through me. These were my parents, people I loved despite their betrayal. But they had stolen $80,000 from my daughter's future. "There's something else you need to know," Sarah continued. "Your father forged your signature as a beneficiary on several of these withdrawal documents. That constitutes fraud, which is a felony charge." She showed me copies of withdrawal forms where my signature appeared in my father's handwriting. The forgery was obvious once I saw it side by side with my actual signature. "He could go to prison for this?" "It's possible. The amount of money involved makes this a serious felony. However, if your family is willing to make full restitution immediately and transfer control of all remaining funds to you, we might be able to avoid criminal prosecution." I thought about Lily, about the opportunities this money could provide for her education and future. I thought about my own dreams of going back to school, of finally being able to provide the life I had always wanted for both of us. "I want to try to resolve this privately first," I decided. "But I want them to understand the serious legal consequences if they don't cooperate fully." Sarah nodded approvingly. "That's a reasonable approach. I'll prepare a demand letter outlining exactly what needs to happen, and by when. We'll also need to secure the secondary trust fund that Jessica mentioned for Lily's education." Over the next 2 hours, we went through every document in detail. Sarah explained that Great Aunt Ruth had been incredibly thorough in her estate planning, specifically because she was concerned about my parents' treatment of me compared to Amanda. "Your great aunt wrote several letters to me expressing her frustrations with your family dynamics," Sarah revealed. "She felt that you had been unfairly blamed for your teenage pregnancy while your sister received special treatment throughout her life." "She saw it too?" Ruth was very perceptive. "She mentioned that your parents seemed to view you as a burden while treating Amanda as a victim who needed constant support. She wanted her inheritance to level the playing field." As I drove home that afternoon, I felt a strange mix of emotions: anger at my family's betrayal, sadness at the years of struggle that could have been avoided, but also hope for the first time in years. Great Aunt Ruth had tried to give me the tools to build a better life, and now I was finally going to receive that gift. My phone rang as I pulled into my apartment parking lot. It was Amanda. "Suzanne, we need to talk. Mom and Dad are really upset about yesterday. They think you're overreacting." "Overreacting?" "Amanda, you've been living off my stolen inheritance for 3 years. How is being angry about that an overreaction?" "It wasn't stolen. Mom and Dad were managing the money for the family's benefit." "For your benefit, you mean? When exactly did my inheritance become family money?" There was a long pause. "Suzanne, I know you're hurt, but we never meant for things to happen this way. It just sort of evolved over time." "Evolved? You mean it evolved from me not knowing about the inheritance to you spending it on private school and dance lessons? Those things benefited Madison. She's part of this family too." I almost hung up on her. The audacity of using my daughter's cousin as justification for stealing from my daughter was breathtaking. "Amanda, I'm going to ask you one question, and I want you to answer honestly. Did you know that money was coming from my inheritance when you used it for Madison's expenses?" Another long pause. "I knew some of it came from Aunt Ruth's estate, But Mom and Dad made it sound like it was family money that could be used to help whoever needed it most at the time. And it never occurred to you that I might need help? That I might want to know about money that was specifically left to me? You seem to be managing okay. You never asked for help. I never asked for help because every time I mentioned struggling financially, I was told that money was tight and I needed to be more responsible with my budgeting. Suzanne, please don't make this into something bigger than it needs to be. We're family. Can't we work this out without involving lawyers? That depends. Are you and Mom and Dad prepared to return every penny that was taken from my inheritance, plus interest, immediately? I don't have $80,000 just sitting around. Then you'd better start figuring out how to get it, because that money belongs to me and Lily. After I hung up, I sat in my car for several minutes, thinking about how dramatically my life was about to change. Lily would finally have the educational opportunities she deserved. I could go back to school and build a career that would provide real financial security. The constant stress of living paycheck to paycheck could finally end. But first, my family was going to learn that their years of manipulation and theft had consequences. 3 days later, I arranged a family meeting at my parents' house. This time, I came prepared with Sarah Martinez, joining us via video call on my laptop. I had also asked Jessica to be present as a witness to the proceedings. The atmosphere was completely different from Christmas dinner. My parents sat stiffly on their couch, while Amanda perched nervously on the edge of an armchair. No one had made coffee or offered refreshments. The warmth and pretense of family togetherness had been stripped away, leaving only uncomfortable truth. Before we begin, I said, setting up my laptop on the coffee table, I want everyone to understand that this conversation is being recorded for legal purposes. Recorded? My mother gasped. Suzanne, we're your family. Why are you treating us like criminals? Because according to the law, taking someone else's inheritance money without permission is a crime. Sarah's voice came through the laptop speakers. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Sarah Martinez, the attorney who handled Ruth Patterson's estate planning. My father's face had turned an alarming shade of red. This is ridiculous. We don't need lawyers involved in family business. Actually, Mr. Patterson, embezzlement of $80,000 is both family business and criminal business, Sarah replied calmly. We're here today to offer you an opportunity to resolve this matter privately before pursuing criminal charges. Criminal charges? My mother's voice was barely a whisper. Yes. Your husband forged Suzanne's signature on multiple withdrawal documents, which constitutes fraud. Additionally, the unauthorized use of inheritance funds for personal expenses by both your daughter Amanda and yourselves constitutes embezzlement. I watched the color drain from my father's face as the reality of his legal situation sank in. Amanda looked like she might be sick. What exactly are you asking for? My father asked quietly. Sarah consulted her notes. Full restitution of all misappropriated funds, totaling $83,467, including interest. Immediate transfer of all remaining inheritance funds directly to Suzanne's control. A formal written acknowledgement of the unauthorized use of funds and a commitment to no future interference with Suzanne's financial affairs. And if we refuse? My father asked. Then we file criminal charges for embezzlement and fraud. Given the amount of money involved and the duration of the scheme, you could be looking at several years in prison. The room fell silent, except for the sound of my mother's quiet crying. I don't understand how it got to this point, she said through her tears. We were trying to help the family. By stealing from me and lying to me for 3 years? I asked. How exactly was that helping me? We thought the money would be better used to help Amanda get back on her feet, my father admitted. You seem to be managing fine on your own. Managing fine? Dad, I've been working 60-hour weeks just to pay basic bills. I've been choosing between groceries and utilities some months. How did that seem like I was managing fine? You never said you were struggling that badly, Amanda said quietly. Because every time I mentioned money problems, you and Mom and Dad would lecture me about budgeting and responsibility. Meanwhile, you were driving around in a car paid for with my inheritance money. Jessica spoke up from her chair by the window. I've known this family for over 20 years, and I've watched this dynamic play out repeatedly. Suzanne has always been held to a higher standard and given less support, while Amanda has been treated as someone who needs constant help and protection. That's not true, my mother protested. Really? Jessica pulled out a small notebook. Over the past 3 years, I've observed Amanda receiving help with car payments, rent assistance, private school tuition for Madison, vacation funding, and regular grocery money from your parents. During that same time period, Suzanne asked for help exactly 3 times. Once when Lily had pneumonia and the medical bills were overwhelming. Once when her car broke down and she couldn't get to work, and once when the roof leaked and caused damage to her apartment. Each time, she was told no and lectured about emergency savings. The evidence was overwhelming. My family couldn't deny the pattern of favoritism and financial manipulation. Amanda, I said, turning to my sister, I need to hear you acknowledge what happened. I need to know that you understand you've been living off money that was meant to help me and Lily. Amanda was crying now, her carefully composed facade finally cracking. I knew it wasn't right. I knew the money was supposed to be yours. But Mom and Dad made it sound temporary, like they were just managing things until you were ready. Ready for what? I've been ready for financial help for 15 years. I'm sorry, she whispered. I was struggling as a single mom, and when they offered help, I didn't ask too many questions about where the money was coming from. But you knew, I pressed. You knew it was my inheritance. Yes, she admitted. I knew. Sarah's voice came through the laptop again. We need a decision today about how this family wants to proceed. We can resolve this privately with full restitution, or we can pursue criminal charges. But the unauthorized use of funds stops immediately either way. My parents looked at each other, clearly realizing they had no choice. We'll find a way to pay back the money, my father said finally. But it might take time. We don't have $80,000 just available. Then you'll need to get a home equity loan or refinance this house, Sarah replied. We're not talking about a payment plan over several years. Suzanne has been deprived of her inheritance for 3 years already, and the remaining inheritance needs to be transferred to my control immediately, I added. No more trustee arrangements, no more family management. It's my money, and I'm taking control of it. My mother looked up at me with red, swollen eyes. Will you be able to forgive us? Can this family heal from this? I thought about Lily, who had spent 10 years believing her family loved her less than her cousin. I thought about the opportunities we had lost, the stress I had endured, the nights I had cried over bills I couldn't pay, while my inheritance was being spent on dance lessons and vacations. That depends, I said finally. Forgiveness requires genuine remorse and changed behavior. It requires acknowledging the harm that was caused and making real efforts to repair it. Can you do that? There was a long pause before my father nodded slowly. Yes. We'll do whatever it takes to make this right. But as I looked around the room at their faces, I wondered if they truly understood the depth of betrayal they had caused, or if they were simply agreeing because they had no other choice. Either way, my inheritance was finally going to be returned to me. And after 15 years of struggle, my daughter and I were finally going to have the financial security that Great Aunt Ruth had intended for us. 6 months later, I stood in the auditorium of the local community college, adjusting my cap and gown, as I prepared to walk across the stage. In the audience, Lily sat in the front row, wearing a beautiful new dress that we had bought together, without checking the price tag first. Next to her sat Jessica, beaming with pride, and surprisingly, my mother and father. The journey to this moment hadn't been easy. After our family meeting, it took my parents 2 months to secure a home equity loan and return the full $83,000 to my account. During those 2 months, the relationship between us was strained and awkward as everyone adjusted to the new reality. Amanda had been the most affected by the revelation of consequences. Without my parents' financial support, she had been forced to move to a smaller apartment and find full-time work. Madison had to leave her expensive dance studio for a less costly community program, though she seemed to adapt to the change better than her mother did. The hardest part for me was watching my parents grapple with the recognition of how their favoritism had damaged both their daughters. My father, in particular, struggled to accept that his protective instincts toward Amanda had led him to steal from me. But the family therapy sessions that Sarah Martinez had recommended as part of our resolution agreement were slowly helping all of us understand the toxic patterns we had fallen into. Suzanne Patterson, Associate Degree in Business Administration, summa cum laude. As I walked across the stage to receive my diploma, I thought about Great Aunt Ruth and how proud she would have been to see me finally pursuing my education. The inheritance money had allowed me to attend college full-time while working only part-time, giving me the opportunity to excel academically in a way I never could have managed while juggling 2 jobs. More importantly, the return of my inheritance had given me something I hadn't had in years: choices. I could choose to take risks, to pursue opportunities, to invest in Lily's future, without the constant fear of financial catastrophe. After the ceremony, my family gathered for dinner at a restaurant I actually chose based on what I wanted to eat rather than what I could afford. The dynamics around the table were still different from our old family gatherings, but they were healthier. "I'm so proud of you, Suzanne," my mother said, and for the first time in years, her praise felt genuine rather than patronizing. "Thank you. It feels amazing to finally finish what I started 18 years ago." "What's next?" Jessica asked. "Are you planning to transfer to a 4-year university?" "Actually, I've been accepted to the State University's accounting program. I start in the fall." My father looked surprised. "Accounting? That's quite ambitious." "Ambitious but realistic," I replied. "I've learned a lot about financial management and family finances over the past few months. I think I'll be good at helping other people navigate complex financial situations." The gentle barb wasn't lost on him, but he took it with good humor. Our relationship was still healing, but his genuine remorse and efforts to change had made forgiveness possible. "Madison's doing well in her new dance program," Amanda offered. "The teachers are really good, even if it's not as fancy as the old studio." "That's wonderful. How are you adjusting to working full-time?" "It's challenging, but honestly, it feels good to be supporting myself and Madison independently. I didn't realize how much the financial help was making me feel like a child instead of an adult." That admission represented real growth for Amanda. The removal of my parents' financial safety net had forced her to develop independence and self-reliance that she had never needed before. Our relationship was still complicated, but it was becoming more honest and equal. "And Lily," my father said, turning to my daughter, "how do you feel about your mom going back to school?" "I'm proud of her," Lily said simply. "And I'm excited about my own college fund. Mom showed me how much money Aunt Ruth left for my education, and we're planning to visit some colleges next year." The second trust fund that Jessica had revealed had indeed been real and substantial. At $50,000, it would provide Lily with educational opportunities I had never dreamed possible. More importantly, she now understood that she was valued and loved by family members beyond just me. "There's something I need to say to all of you," I said, setting down my fork and looking around the table. "This has been a difficult year for our family. We've had to confront some painful truths about how we've treated each other and what we've prioritized." Everyone grew quiet, sensing the seriousness of what I was about to say. "But I've learned something important through this process. Family love isn't about blind loyalty or protecting each other from consequences. Real family love means holding each other accountable with honesty and fairness. It means supporting each other's growth and independence, not enabling dependence and manipulation." My mother reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're right. We failed you for a long time by treating you as though you were less deserving of support than Amanda. That was wrong, and I'm sorry it took such a dramatic situation for us to recognize it. We're still learning," my father added, "but I promise you that the favoritism and financial manipulation stops permanently. You and Amanda are both our daughters, and you both deserve equal love and support." "Equal, but appropriate," I clarified. "Amanda and I are both adults now. Support should be about encouraging our independence and growth, not about fixing our problems for us." As we finished dinner and prepared to leave the restaurant, Jessica pulled me aside. "I'm so proud of how you handled this situation," she said. "Ruth would be amazed to see how you've transformed her gift into exactly what she hoped it would become." "What do you mean?" "She wanted to give you independence and opportunity. But more than that, She wanted to give you the confidence to demand fair treatment from people who had been taking advantage of your strength and resilience. You've done exactly that. Looking back on the past 6 months, I could see that Jessica was right. The inheritance money had been important, but the more valuable gift had been learning to recognize my worth and fight for my rights, even when it was uncomfortable or difficult. As we walked to our cars, Lily slipped her hand into mine. "Mom, can I ask you something?" "Of course, sweetie. Are you happy now?" I thought about the question seriously. The past year had been emotionally exhausting, filled with family conflict and painful revelations. But for the first time in my adult life, I felt financially secure and optimistic about the future. More importantly, I felt respected by my family and confident in my ability to protect Lily from the kind of unfair treatment I had endured. "Yes," I said finally. "I'm happy. Are you?" She smiled up at me. "Yes. I like it when you stand up for us." As we drove home to our new apartment in a better neighborhood, I reflected on Great Aunt Ruth's wisdom in structuring her inheritance the way she did. She had understood that financial support alone wouldn't solve my family's problems. She had also given me the tools and evidence I needed to confront the toxic patterns that had held me back for decades. The money had been important, but the courage to demand better treatment had been life-changing. 6 months from now, I would start my junior year at the university. 2 years after that, I would graduate with a bachelor's degree in accounting and begin a career that would provide long-term financial stability for my family. Lily would continue excelling in school, knowing that her college education was secured and that her mother would always fight for her rights and opportunities. But perhaps most importantly, our family had learned that true love requires holding each other accountable with honesty and fairness. The favoritism and manipulation that had defined our relationships for decades was finally coming to an end. Great Aunt Ruth had given me more than an inheritance. She had given me the power to break generational patterns of inequality and ensure that Lily would grow up in a family that valued fairness, honesty, and genuine support. As I tucked Lily into bed that night in her own room for the first time in her life, I whispered a quiet thank you to Great Aunt Ruth for believing I deserved better and for giving me the tools to achieve it. The Christmas morning that had shattered my world had indeed changed everything. But in the end, it had changed everything for the better. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this story. Have you ever experienced favoritism within your own family, or watched someone close to you struggle with unequal treatment from relatives? How did you handle the situation? And what advice would you give to someone facing similar challenges? Please share your experiences in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's dealing with difficult family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like to help others find it who might need to hear this message about standing up for fairness in family relationships. And don't forget to subscribe for more true stories about overcoming family challenges and fighting for what's right. Sharing this video could make a real difference for someone who's struggling with similar issues in their own family. So please pass it along to anyone who might benefit from hearing about the importance of demanding equal treatment and respect. Thank you so much for listening to my story and for supporting others who are working to create healthier family relationships. Remember that you deserve to be treated fairly by the people who claim to love you, and it's never too late to start demanding the respect you deserve. Wishing you all the courage to stand up for yourselves and the wisdom to know when it's time to fight for what's right.